And now I'd like to open the meeting to the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science.
I'm so grateful tonight for how all I am learning at this church is helping me to clear out the clutter in my thinking. My head used to be a noisy mess filled with constant negativity and doubts, with no understanding of how to move forward or actually do something meaningful with my life. I was full of words and self, not able to be quiet and listen to God. Thankfully, I was brought here and introduced to Christian Science. Occasionally, I run into into moments where I feel those old negative thoughts come in. But thanks to the recent roundtables on animal magnetism and daily practitioner support, all that is getting easier to detect and get rid of. All that has changed in me since first coming to Plainfield has brought me from a feeling as though I was looking at life through a dirty little window to now feeling like I am actually experiencing life as God intended it. I know I'm still learning, so that statement will undoubtedly become more true with time, but already it is so wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
I am so grateful for the membership that came forth and added to our newsletter to make it a complete newsletter that's coming out shortly. It is so great. I am so grateful for it. For I had doubts as whether we'd have a successful meeting, a successful newsletter, and yet it has turned out to be a marvelous one. I am so grateful. Thank you.
And thank you, Jim. Linda from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening. I'd like to express my gratitude once again for the fabulous teachings here at Plainfield, especially regarding the thorough and I would say clearest teachings I've ever heard on sin, forgiveness, evil. I had recently a chance to put into practice some of the things I'm learning. At work, we had a retirement party for a man with whom was pretty much head of the organization in which I work, and many things have happened under his watch that I would consider dishonest, unjust, and I could go on with the list. But anyways, needless to say, I did not have very good feelings toward him, and it was very hard for me to be there. But learning at Plainfield, I knew I had to face it as the thoughts were coming, and not to just let it go. And I started by separating this errors that I was seeing from this person, and seeing it more. I think I learned in some articles that I read that it was better to pity the person than to feel anger, and so I was able to do that, and even a sense of doing unto others, because I know, especially since I've been Plainfield and seeing more and more of my own failings, that I would want somebody to be forgiving toward me. And one of the testimonies recently also helped me, where she said that she had taken a lot of qualities of God and seen it in man, as maybe as simple as kind and gentle and loving, and could look at those instead of what she was seeing, and that it helped her love more. And I did do that, and that helped me a lot. And I'm just very grateful, because instead of leaving with resentment or disgust and hate, I was able to leave in peace. And it actually healed some of the past resentment I had been carrying. And I'm sure it was even freeing for me in my past. I'm very grateful to have this new knowledge and the principles and tools so that we can follow Jesus' command to love. Thank you also for the beautiful readings tonight. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Sana from Illinois, go ahead. Hear you. You may be on mute where you are. Okay, we still don't hear you, Sonny. We'll come back to you. Luann from New York, go ahead.
Thank you. Since coming here to study Christian Science, I've been healed of the effects of abuse and many other unpleasant character traits that I'm very pleased to be rid of. The difference in my life now as compared to how destructive and painful it was before is remarkable. The change in atmosphere came slowly, with persistence in prayer, gaining knowledge through the Bible study and roundtable discussions, the articles, and the wonderful support I received from my practitioner, whose loving corrections and endless supply of truth guide me to live rightly and to have a genuine desire to do what is pleasing to God. Each new day brings me closer to God and understanding my relationship to Him. I'm more patient, more loving, less inclined to think negative thoughts, and slow to react when things are not going as I think they should. I trust God and wait patiently for His will to be done. As a result, new people are coming into my life. Opportunities have opened up to me that I had closed myself off to before. I no longer stress about money or the future. My relationship is better, and everyday living is less chaotic. I read the other day this truth. There is no mind so hardened that it cannot change. There is no mortal emotions impervious to divine love. How true it is. When we put God first in our lives, change does come. For the longest time, I thought nothing good would ever come into my life. I believed life was not worth living. Because of Christian Science, turning my focus to God, raising my expectations heavenward, teaching me what is required, all of that has changed. Christian Science shows us that no matter how grim the human problems may seem, we can always wake up spiritually to the truth that makes us free. I'm very grateful for all I've been given and for all the work and dedication of the members of this church who bring God into focus for me and all of mankind. Thank you.
Thank you. Laverne from Maryland, go ahead.
Hello. I'm so very grateful tonight. Over the last month, I've been experiencing a dull ache in my chest area and have been working to know that it is a lie about God and about God's creation. And every attempt to analyze the pain was conquered through prayer. I even remember that my grandmother used to say that when we analyze error searching for a cause or a diagnosis, we are conjuring devils, lies. And although fear would creep in when I get distracted with work, I would affirm my oneness with God rather than my oneness with this so-called condition. I refused to call it my pain. And the more I prayed, the pain started to subside until Saturday. I was at work, and I allowed myself to get overwhelmed again, and the pain became very severe. So I reached out to a Christian Science practitioner from this church, and she immediately calmed my thoughts. She said that all is infinite mind and his infinite manifestation. And I got it in a way that I've never got it before. And before I hung up the phone, I was healed. The pain left, and it has not, and it will not return. I am so grateful for this healing and for so many others that I've had since I've come to this church. And I continue to be grateful for Christian Science, for this church, and for practitioner support. And I thank you for the beautiful readings and the inspiring testimonies tonight.
Thank you. Someone's called in from area code 603-359. Please announce yourself and go ahead with your testimony.
This is George from Vermont. I'm very glad to be here tonight. Several weeks ago, I talked with one of the practitioners about my stressful and hurried lifestyle, and she was very helpful and reminded me that every time that I choose to continue sinning or to walk in error this way, that I'm hardening my heart against God. And that conversation really stuck with me, and I made some decisions to slow down, primarily in the way I drive, which is kind of like a barometer in some ways for the rest of my life. So I began to see some fruit from that. And it's always tempting when a stressful situation arises just to go back to the old ways of doing things, of sort of stressing out and trying to do things in my own strength and really leaving God out of the equation. And recently we were, last week, we were completing a building in Delaware, a beautiful art studio, and we ran short of this pretty exotic and expensive siding that we had stained at the factory up here in Vermont. And so I had a crew up here paint it to replicate what was done at the factory, and brought it down to Delaware to help the guys finish up. And when I got there, to my consternation, the siding we had painted was not the same color as what the factory had done. Something had gone wrong, doing it in sunlight or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And so this is a real test. It's like, did I believe that this was going to be okay and the guy had a plan for this, or do I just completely stress out and scurry around and go nuts like I usually do? And so I remember praying. I went out early in the morning and prayed and told God I knew this was His building and this was His project, and that I could choose to believe Him, that all was meant to be harmonious and He had a plan. And instead of getting all stressed out and the client was showing up, I was able to be calm, and we met with another contractor to go over the interior, and I mentioned the shiplap problem, and he brought up that his father-in-law was a painter for 30 years and practically lived next door. So he called him and brought him over, and he looked over and saw us sanding all the boards, all the wrong color off, and said we were doing the right thing there, and that he was sure he could doctor them up once they were adhered to the wall and make them the right color. And I'm just bringing this up because this is the kind of thing I would normally just go nuts over. And instead of doing that, I was able to trust God, to take Him at His word, to remind myself that everything I do and everything I have and everything that we're about on this earth is ultimately and totally under His control and His guidance and His love. So instead of resorting and turning back to myself, which has been my habit, I was able to not do that. And I'm really grateful for what I'm learning here at Plainfield in the lessons and the meetings, and especially in the testimonies. So I just want I really appreciate it, and I'm grateful to see a little bit of fruit in my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chardell from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening, Plainfield Church. I would like to share my gratitude for our practitioners at Plainfield Church for their unwavering, tireless devotion to the cause of healing through Christian Science. No matter where they are or what time it may be, our practitioners are prayerfully alert and on duty for God. Recently, I had the opportunity to stand for a moral right in my family, and I did this, and was told by a practitioner, quote, "You stand with principle, principle stands with you." And I am so grateful. Thank you so much. The testimonies are wonderful. The readings are so powerful and beautiful. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you. Day from Maryland, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm grateful for tonight's reminder to check the Plainfield website frequently. I'm able to visit the site daily, and no matter what thought, feeling, problem, or question I may have, I can always ask God, to direct me to what I need from the website, to address it, and He always does. I'm most grateful for the opportunity to learn the lesson from what I read, to gain the understanding, to make the message my own, and to share it with others when God gives me the opportunity. I'm thankful for everyone who maintains and contributes to the Plainfield website. Thank you so much for tonight's meeting and so much for tonight's readings.
Thank you.
I want to say how grateful I am that our services heal. Our services are filled with love, with truth, and they heal. I remember a while ago, on Wednesday morning, I began to get a very sore throat, and by the end of the day, I'd lost my voice. But there was something in that week's lesson that was very helpful to me that I worked with. In Science and Health, it says, discords have no support from nature or divine law. And I remember thinking to myself, well, this soreness has no support from nature or divine law. And that means I don't have to accept it, and I'm not going to accept it. So I started working along those lines and getting pretty revved up about it. Well, that evening I went to the service. I was able to participate in the service, and I was able to sing the last hymn. And by the time the service was over, the soreness was all gone, did not ever come back. I am so grateful to Mary Baker Eddy for giving us the science that governs everything in the universe, that frees us from everything that could come to us. And I'm so grateful to be a member of this church.
Thank you. Elizabeth from Georgia, go ahead.
This morning I was in a hospital waiting room while my husband was having a medical procedure. And I'm just grateful for a couple of things. It was a very calm environment, and I was able to be in a quiet room away from the blaring TV. And I had my phone with me, so I was able to access the Plainfield website. And I love that wherever I am, I can pull that website up, which has so many great articles. And so I was going through the carousel, and it was just full of inspiration, one after the other. But I had found an article that was on there by Bicknell Young titled Healing, and I'll just read a couple of things. He says, all healing is really God with us. The divine mind which heals through Christian science heals because it asserts itself as intelligence and law through right thought, which has natural power, and which thereby dispossesses of the wrong belief. It is not labored. And it goes on. But I just felt so much inspiration and just felt God's love right there. And it just took away any concern that I had. And everything went well, and we walked out not too much longer. So I was just grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, last week there were a couple of testifiers that said how grateful they were for our magazine, Love is the Liberator. Tonight, I'd like to add my thanks to that as well. I picked up that magazine, and it's like I just couldn't let go of it. It was so wonderful. But I wanted to just share one thing. There's an article in there by Bicknell Young. I was reading through it, and then I came across this one statement where he says, if we allow a claim to annoy us, we cheat ourselves out of progress. And that made me stop dead in my tracks right then and there. I guess it was something I needed to hear. Something comes up, what do? Get annoyed. Well, that's not the right way, because after all, God's law is progress. So I had a chance to put it in practice recently, where it came to mind where somebody else failed to do what they're supposed to do, and I'm the one that's actually ultimately responsible for it. So the tendency would have been very easy for me to get annoyed. But I just didn't this time. I simply sent the person another communication. This is the circumstance. It's your responsibility to take care of it. Please do so. 5 minutes later, okay, I've done it. It was simple as that, and I didn't get annoyed, for which I'm very grateful. Because after reading Mr. Bicknell Young's article, it came so clear to me that if I let myself get annoyed, I'm actually gripping a hold of the problem instead of resolving it. And the other thing that came to my mind was Mary Baker Eddy's statement where she says to meet every adverse circumstance as its master. So wouldn't the devil like to throw something at us and then give us two choices, do nothing about it or get annoyed about it? Well, we're not going to take either one. We're going to take God's path. He has the resolution for everything. And when we find it through His graciousness, we advance. We get closer to God. And that is a good thing. So I'm grateful for that magazine and for that one article. It certainly helped me the other day.
I like to thank God for my daily life, make situation, handle situation, and make decision, and always God control this situation, and every day bring something new, and I able to handle. And thanks for everything to God, and thanks Bruce for wonderful reading.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. Tonight I'd like to give gratitude once more, and I know I will always do, for how God has changed my life and the direction with which He has brought me. I read in Bicknell Young that the only meekness, the only humility is acknowledging no power or mind but God. And in this church, so many times the supremacy of God is mentioned in our readings. I see now how to bring my whole life, everything about it, to Him has contributed to making the necessary change that I needed so much. For so long, I tried to manage and control the direction of my life. I had a profession, so I was, going along with it. And when I thought I needed more money or I needed a better lifestyle, I ventured into different things that, to me, were going to help me. I was praying to God to help me with those. And I've mentioned my many disappointments in past testimonies. But I started studying Christian Science, and there came a point where I had to make a decision whether to forfeit my license or to continue with what was impelling me to go with the new understanding I was gaining. I remember I really prayed to God to make that decision for me, because I was reasoning in human terms. What am I going to do about money? What am I going to do? This license that took me so long to get, and all this. But I thank God so much for sustaining me to stand with the courage with what was leading me in a different path in life. I am so grateful that I was able to let the license go and follow His direction. I thank God so much because from that time, he led me to find Plainfield, and my life has not been the same. Looking back now, I don't know what I could be doing now that would equal the peace, the joy, the satisfaction that he is giving me in the work that I do. Sometimes I just stop and look back on how my whole life has changed. And with the deepest gratitude, I thank God, I thank Mary Baker Eddy, I thank the teachers that have gone on in this church and continue to go on. I thank everyone who contributes to our website. And I cannot thank God enough for his grace, because when it seemed hard to leave what I knew, I turned to him and he answered me. I am so grateful for everything that this church has offered me and for the completely new direction that God has led me to follow. Thank you so much for those inspiring readings about sin and repentance. Thank you for all the testimonies. And thank God for these meetings that are meeting mankind's need in so many ways.
Thank you.
I was remembering a wonderful healing that I had a while back. Whenever I coughed, sneezed, or bent over, I would have a sharp pain in my side. And then came the thought, what did I do? I immediately smashed that thought and replaced it with I'm God's perfect spiritual idea. This is not true about God, and it's not true about me. And I also worked with a statement from Science and Health from that week's lesson, which helped so much. Mentally contradict every complaint from the body. I kept working along these lines, and in a couple of days, the problem was gone. God can heal anything. I'm just so grateful for all the wonderful healings I've had, and for Mrs. Eddy for giving this Christian Science to the world that heals everything with God. And thank you for those wonderful readings.
Thank you.
Thank you for those readings that we were given. I'm sure of the prodigal son, and it is so much. It's so beautiful that God has had the patience to lead me and probably many back to Him, and to surround them with love and support, and to guide and to make their life worthwhile, give them purpose in life. In addition to that, so much is given here in the lessons and the hymns. It's just stay with you. In many mornings when I wake up, I know it's right to get up and do things, but it's not until I start singing the hymns while I'm laying in the bed do I really wake up. And it's such a wealth for them to go through. But after a few of them, I'm quite alert, and the day goes on, and at least I'm in the right direction to be able to do something useful and bless someone, hopefully. This is a wonderful religion. I've never had anything like that before. Prior, as another denomination, it was just every Sunday go to a church and pretty much hope to hold on to it to the next Sunday, which I often never did. but I really feel this really gives us a walking stick and a guide, a light to go with. Thank you, God, and His church, for Mary Baker Radio also.
Thank you.
I have a few things I'll read tonight from our church website bulletin board. The first from Georgia, Isaiah, quote, "Yet it shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer, and yet while they are speaking, I will hear," end quote. Since I've been attending Bible study and roundtable at Plainfield, this has proven true time and again for me. I will be thinking of something to ask or comment on, and before I do, it is addressed and answered. My need is met. You just can't get any better than that. Thank you so much, Plainfield. And then Vermont. Thank you for another beautiful Sunday service. I especially like the song, "Found a Lily in My Valley." It's the first time I've heard this song. It was especially touching since I was just tending to my bed of lily of the valley flowers yesterday. What a blessing this church is to the whole world. And then Pennsylvania. I wish to thank Elsie and Fairley for their marvelous readings last Wednesday night at the Wednesday night testimony meeting. The peace and quiet calm felt like a treatment. After the service, I had to just sit and be still to savor the experience of the whole meeting. I have to second that. A week ago, I wasn't in Plainfield, nor was I able to attend the Wednesday meeting service live, but early Thursday morning in my hotel room, I was so grateful to be able to listen to it. And wasn't very far into it that tears were just streaming down my face because of the beauty of it, of the sincerity of everything. The music, the readings, the testimonies, they were so heartfelt. It was such an expression of gratitude for Mrs. Eddy and for God. I was tempted at first, since it was early in the morning, to keep the volume down, but I thought, wow, this hotel has to hear this. So I turned it up full blast, and as far as I know, no one complained. It was a beautiful service, and I was so touched by it. I was thinking today how in the midst of the law case, I was so heartened by the fact that we would be getting members from all over this country. I likened it to Noah's Ark because they seemed to come 2 by 2 from various states. And it was marvelous to see. More recently, I have studied American history, in particular the Revolutionary War, because I feel it is so biblical. But anyway, in reading about that, the armies were in brigades. There was the New Jersey Brigade, there was the Maryland Brigade. So now I think of us in that respect. And in the wartime, in the Revolutionary War, when there was a tremendous need, a certain brigade would meet that need. For instance, the New England Brigade, they had these wonderful seamen, and they were able to help when their fighting had to be done on rivers or water. And the Pennsylvania Brigade were riflemen, and they were the ones who were so well trained in marksmanship. But each one had something very, very important to offer, to contribute to the greater whole. And so it is in this church, and so it is with all of you. We do have our New England Brigade, our Pennsylvania Brigade, our Maryland Brigade, our New Jersey Brigade, our Western Brigade, all around our country. And it is glorious to see. We are in an army, and when there is a need, the need is met. You rise up and meet it. I'm so grateful to all of you for this tremendous dedication that you've given to this church, the fact that we can have meetings that go forth with such power and strength, The readings tonight were beautiful. Each testimony was so heartfelt and beautiful. It goes out to meet the need of a world that needs to hear this truth. So very grateful to be here tonight. And again, I thank you all.
Thank you.